Well, good morning, America. This is the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson, uh, and we're headed overseas where President Trump just did what no president before him had dared to demand and got results. Here's a headline: Trump forces NATO to raise defense spending. That's right. In The Hague, the commander in chief of the United States of America stood before our so called allies and laid down the law. He said, get to 5% of GDP for defense by 2035 or consider your security guarantees conditional. Yeah. I love this dude. Now, Trump arrived at the NATO summit with one thing in his mind: accountability. Not handshakes, not photo ops, not some European Union climate conference BS, just this message. If you want US protection, start pulling your weight. Under Trump's leadership, NATO leaders agreed, albeit begrudgingly. They didn't want to. They agreed to a massive increase in defense spending. The new target, 5% of GDP by 2035. A lot of, and I think what a lot of people here don't realize, a lot of these countries, especially these socialist countries that are in NATO and the like, they're able to afford a lot of their programs because what they don't do is they don't provide for their own defense. They barely have militaries. They have maybe some NATO fighting forces, but they don't have militaries. There's one country in the world that would have been able to do what happened a couple of days ago. Fly from their country 17 hours to another country, drop off an Amazon package, blow some up, and then return back to their home country 17 hours later, undetected. One country in the world was able to do that. It wasn't Norway, it wasn't Germany, it wasn't France, it wasn't the UK, not Russia. One nation in the world. And why? It's because we spend money on that. So you know what you don't have to do? What we don't have to do is worry about going to Iran and putting boots on the ground. Why? When we can reach them from frickin' Missouri. Come on now. But under Trump's leadership, NATO agreed. They did. The target again is 5% of the nation's GDP, which is a small percentage, but they need to be donating at least that. And it's up from the previous 2%. That countries weren't even doing that. Let that sink in. Europe's finally waking up from decades of defense welfare. Trump dragged them to the table, not with charm, but with blunt force honesty. Now, if it wasn't, and that wasn't the case, simply saying that if you don't come to 5% before 2035, protecting from the United States is now conditional. That scared the crap out of them, because what the left doesn't realize, what people on the left don't realize here, and a lot of Democrats, in the street don't realize here, is that we indeed protect the rest of the planet. And you know what? The rest of the planet, they talk a bunch of BS, but they know it. They absolutely know it. They know without, the big brother USA, or daddy, as they call Trump, they are terrified. They cannot defend themselves. Now, unfortunately, they put themselves in this position. Nobody is stopping France from having a kick-ass military. Nobody is stopping, Spain from having a kick-ass military. Nobody is stopping European countries from having a kick-ass military. Now, everybody looked at Germany for a while and said, hey, now, can't trust Germany because y'all had a really good military once, but y'all went off the rails. But nobody is stopping the UK. Nobody is stopping Switzerland or Norway or Liechtenstein from having a military that can defend their own country. Why? Because they've for years depended on the United States. They've depended on our blood and treasure through this NATO alignment, and the UN to come to their defense, while they don't pay for their own defense. The world realizes that, and so does Trump. Because for decades, U.S. taxpayers footed the bill while Germany, France, and others built wind farms and handed out subsidies. Meanwhile, American troops died in places like Kandahar and Fallujah. Not just for us, but for all of them. Trump called it what it was, a one-sided insurance policy. And this week, he said premiums are going up. And it wasn't alone. Behind closed doors, several NATO leaders admitted that they knew this day was coming. They knew this day was coming. Trump's 2018 demand for 2% was just the appetizer. This 5% deal, now that's the meal. Now, this timing of this agreement matters because you remember just days earlier, U.S.-backed strikes hit the Iranian nuclear facilities, part of a growing confrontation that could pull Europe into another Middle East crisis. Trump used that moment as leverage. If you want the U.S. to cover your six when missiles start flying, get your budgets in line right now. And you know what? It worked. Diplomats from Poland, the UK, and even Italy signed immediate increases to defense spending. France, they whined. Germany, they frowned. But in the end, they signed. Okay, now cue the panic from the global press corps. Trump strong arms allies. NATO's future is in doubt. Is this the end of multilateral diplomacy? Please. What Trump did was to give NATO what it always lacked: teeth. He turned an aging Cold War relic into something that looks like it might be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And the press doesn't like it because they don't like America taking the lead from the front, unless it's with some soft language and even softer power. As long as we pay, as long as we send our sons and daughters to die, we can just sit amongst sit in the middle of the table with our checkbooks out. But the second that we go to the head of the table and start saying, hey, things need to change, now we're being a bully. I mean, when some of these countries knew that this was coming, they knew that there was a reckoning coming. Doesn't seem like a bad time or a bad idea. Oh, okay, let's be crystal clear here. This deal saves you money. Every time a European nation boosts its military, the U.S. has to do less. Fewer deployments, less risk to our troops, our dads, our moms, our sons, our daughters, and the lower cost for American families. It's economic patriotism. It's foreign policy with a spine. Yes, France, you're going to have to defend yourself. Yes, Germany, you're going to have to defend yourself. Yes, Italy, you're going to have to defend yourself. Yes, UK, you're going to have to defend yourself. Yes, Scotland, Norway, you're going to have to defend yourself. And it only happened because Trump isn't interested in polite applause from Brussels bureaucrats. And it's fine. What a fine speaker. He wants results. Period. End of story. No cap. Now we always have to wonder, oh, are people going to do it? Because the deal is binding. They have to do it in principle. But the question is, will they follow through? Some will, for sure. Poland and the Baltics are already buying more F-35s and Patriot missiles from us. The UK's Tory government is fast tracking shipbuilding programs. Others will drag their heels. But this time, Trump added that twist. Future NATO operations will be cost shared based on compliance. In other words, if you don't pay in, you don't get the full benefit. Finally, consequences. Folks, this is a turning point. Finally, this is a turning point. A moment when America stopped playing global babysitter and start demanding partnership instead of dependency. If you believe in a strong America that doesn't get pushed around by its so-called allies, this is your win. If you want to support voices that tell it straight, no media spin, no elitist gloss, support the Morning Report. Visit fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. Follow us here on YouTube and subscribe on patreon.com/Morning Report. Because this is how we win. This is how we lead. And this is why Trump at NATO matters. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. Until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.